I recognize Mr. Goldman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure I understand what 4 hours and 20 minutes of fuss is about. Miss Washington was a crew lead charged with helping to provide assistance to individuals in the following the hurricane. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. You said that FEMA has 22,000 employees?
More than.
More than 22,000. Okay. And as I understand it, as soon as you saw verified written evidence that Miss Washington used partisanship in executing her job, you immediately terminated her.
Correct.
And you're now doing an investigation to determine whether anyone else was involved in this.
Correct.
Seems like that's the right thing to do. You have a bad apple out of 22,000, and you identified it and you fired it. I don't understand what the massive fuss here is. It's obviously, as you say, unacceptable conduct, and you acted immediately. So this, I've not been in here all day, but I've heard the same questions 5 times myself. I'm sure you've heard them many more times. But it does beg the question about what happens to FEMA if partisanship bleeds into its mission. And I want to bring up 2 examples from the last administration. Hurricane Maria, you may recall, in September of 2017, hit Puerto Rico, resulting in nearly 3,000 deaths. Donald Trump was president then, and he blocked the full release of the emergency assistance appropriated by Congress in 2018 and permitted only a small percentage of the money to go to the island. He insisted that Puerto Rico was not in need of that assistance and alleged that the death tolls had been politically inflated, quote, to make me look as bad as possible. In November of 2018, California suffered the most destructive and deadliest wildfire in the state's history. Donald Trump, according to his own former National Security Council staffer, refused to approve disaster aid because the state of California had a Democratic governor and did not vote for him. In fact, this former staffer had to go and pull out the voting records from Orange County where the fire was to show Donald Trump that Orange County had more supporters for Trump than the entire state of Iowa, so that he would ultimately release the funding. Now, that appears to me to inject partisanship in administering disaster relief. Is that your understanding of what I just recited to you, Ms. Criswell?
I was not the FEMA administrator during that time, and I would not care to comment on that.
Well, I think it's pretty self-evident that that is exactly what it was. And this now has continued in the recent disasters. We're here focused on one rogue employee who was justifiably and correctly fired. But Donald Trump went on a misinformation campaign to slander your organization. He at one point said that President Biden was sleeping and he was not responding to Georgia Governor Brian Kemp. Brian Kemp responded, "The president just called me yesterday afternoon and I missed him and I called him right back and he just said, 'Hey, what do you need?' And I told him, we've got what we need. We'll work through the federal process." How about this one? Governor Ron DeSantis. Everything we've asked for from President Biden, he has approved. And we do think we'll get more approvals. Republican Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia. We got what we need from FEMA. We've had FEMA embedded with us since, a day or two before the storm hit. Governor Glenn Youngkin, Republican of Virginia. I'm incredibly appreciative of the rapid response and the cooperation from the federal team at FEMA. Yet Donald Trump was spreading misinformation that FEMA was not doing its job. And then the last few seconds, I'd like for you to explain how that misinformation hindered FEMA's efforts to provide disaster relief to those in need.
Any type of misinformation that creates some type of mistrust in the federal government creates a lack of opportunity for individuals that have been impacted by these disasters to get the assistance that they need and that they're eligible for. And we want to be able to reach out to everybody that has been impacted and assure them that we are there to support them. They should register for assistance, and we can work with them to help them on their road to recovery.
And do you think that there were some people who did not receive disaster assistance because of this misinformation by Donald Trump?
We will never know if there are people that should have applied and didn't, but there is the possibility that individuals may not have applied for assistance because of what they were reading across social media.
Okay. Well, there are plenty of publications and media reports about that being the case, and it is a terrific shame. And thank you very much, Administrator Criswell, for all of your hard work during difficult times.